At the far end of a narrow alley in the outskirts of the city stood an old two-story house. By day, the street was noisy with traffic, but at night it grew eerily quiet. The house loomed at the very end, its once white walls now yellowed and scarred with deep cracks, like old wounds that never healed. The rusty iron gate had not been opened for years. It always stayed shut, silent and heavy, like a giant that had fallen into an endless sleep in the middle of a busy neighborhood. Locals called it the house next door, but whenever it was mentioned, voices dropped to a whisper. Nobody wanted to talk about it for long. The story went that the family who once lived there had all died mysteriously one stormy night. Since then, the house had been abandoned, avoided by everyone who lived nearby. By daylight, it looked like just another decaying building, but once darkness fell, the house changed. The second-floor window glowed faintly under the yellow street lamp. Some swore they had seen the figure of a woman in white standing behind the glass, long hair hanging over her face, silently watching the alley below. Neighborhood kids dared each other to pass by at midnight. The bravest would stop in front of the gate for a few seconds and listen. They all told the same stories afterward. The sound of footsteps coming slowly down the stairs, the scrape of a chair moving across the floor, or sometimes the soft, broken sound of a woman crying upstairs. Adults avoided talking about it. Old men at the tea shops would mutter, half joking, half serious, "That place is empty, but something inside is always watching." One woman insisted she had seen the upstairs window slam shut in bold daylight when there hadn't been a breath of wind. Years passed, but nobody repaired or demolished the house. The paperwork was said to be cursed, tied up in endless disputes. A few families tried to rent it, tempted by the cheap price. None stayed longer than a week. Some fled in the middle of the night, leaving their belongings behind. Others left at dawn, pale and trembling, claiming they had heard relentless knocking on the door all night, only to open it and find no one there, just wet footprints leading into their bedroom. And so the house remained, a dark stain on the memory of the street. By day, people hurried past, pretending it wasn't there. But at night, when the wind slipped through the cracks and the old gate groaned, everyone shivered. The rumors grew darker with every telling, like layers of dust settling over a corpse. Some said you could stand outside the gate with your eyes closed, and you'd hear someone whispering your name right next to your ear. Others claimed that if you dared look straight into the upstairs window, you'd see someone or something staring back at you. Whether the stories were true or not, the house still stood, silent and suffocating, like a pit that swallowed every trace of light. And it was this place, this forgotten ruin, that set the stage for everything that came after, when a skeptic, someone who didn't believe in ghosts, moved in right next door.
Minh was a provincial student who had just passed the university entrance exam in the city. Quiet and reserved by nature, he didn't pay much attention to rumors about ghosts. While searching for a room to rent, he accidentally found a small house right next to an abandoned, haunted house. The landlord was a middle-aged man with a busy air. He only showed Minh around briefly before hurrying away. You can stay here if you like. Don't pay attention to what people say. That house next door has been abandoned for years. There's nothing there, the man said without once daring to look toward the neighboring house. To Minh, it was simple. The rent was cheap, the place was near his school, and the surroundings were quiet, perfect for studying. He moved in the next day with a few boxes of books, some personal belongings, and his old laptop. The first day passed normally. Minh arranged his desk by the window, from which he could see the small courtyard and the rusty iron gate of the house next door. Afternoon sunlight filtered through the bushes, casting a pale yellow over the blotched, moss-covered wall. A slight shiver ran down Minh's spine, but he quickly chuckled to himself, just scary stories, that's all. That night, while he was reading in bed, the wind whistled through the cracks in the door, sounding eerily like whispers. He brushed it off, thinking it was just his imagination. But around midnight, a soft knocking came. Tock, tock, tock. Minh jolted upright, his heart pounding. He crept to the door, cracked it open, and peeked into the dark hallway. No one was there. Only his own shadow stretched long across the wall, trembling under the faint glow of a street light outside. He sighed. Probably just the wind, or a cat. He shut the door and went back to bed, but the knocking didn't stop. 15 minutes later, it came again, softer this time, steady, as if a patient hand were tapping in rhythm. Tuck, tuck, tuck. This time, Minh decided to ignore it, pulling the blanket over his head. The next morning, he told his classmate Tuen about it. Tuen, who was fascinated by the supernatural, widened his eyes. "Bro, maybe it's already noticed you." "What do you mean, it?" He laughed. "The ghost. I heard someone died unjustly in that house. The spirit never moved on. They say if you hear knocking at night, you're doomed." Minh shook his head, dismissing it, but a vague unease lingered inside him. That afternoon, while buying food at the alley entrance, Minh met an old woman selling tea. She leaned on a cane, her cloudy eyes strangely sharp. Seeing Minh, she called out, "You're the one who just moved in here, aren't you?" "Yes, ma'am," Minh replied politely. The old woman's voice was slow, like wind through dry leaves. "At night, don't look at the second-floor window of the house next door. Anyone who looks will be called by name in their sleep." A chill ran through Minh. He wanted to ask more, but the woman turned away without another word. On the third night, Minh tried hard not to pay attention, but the more he tried to ignore it, the louder the noises from the abandoned house became. Sometimes it was a dragging sound, like furniture being moved. Sometimes it was heavy footsteps echoing down the stairs. Once, Minh swore he heard someone breathing right beside his ear as he lay his head on the pillow. Sleep slipped further and further away. Each time he glanced at the window, the unnerving feeling that someone was staring at him from across the way froze the back of his neck. Still, he reassured himself, "I'm just overworked. Studying too much makes me hallucinate." But deep down, a nameless fear had taken root. And from the third night onward, that fear would no longer be vague. It would become a living, terrifying experience.
That afternoon, the skies suddenly opened up with a steady drizzle. The rain fell thin and endless, as if it had no intention of stopping. The narrow alley glistened under dim yellow streetlights.
shadows of trees stretching across the wet concrete like long, reaching arms. Minh pulled his flimsy raincoat tighter around himself as he passed the tea stall of the old woman he had met the other day. She sat hunched under the low awning, her cloudy eyes fixed on the abandoned house. When she saw Minh, she called softly, "Come here, just for a moment." Minh hesitated, then stepped closer. Her bony hand reached out, icy cold, gripping his wrist. She leaned in, her voice low and rasping. "Last night, you heard it, didn't you?" Minh froze. He hadn't told anyone about the sounds, except Tuan. But the old woman spoke as if she had witnessed everything. He stammered, "I only heard the wind, ma'am." The old woman shook her head. Her clouded eyes suddenly sharpened with a chilling clarity. "That wasn't the wind. It was her. Ever since that house was abandoned, every night she calls, and those who answer never come back." Minh forced a nervous laugh, though his back prickled with cold sweat. "But I don't really believe in ghosts. Once people die, they're gone, right?"
The woman neither smiled nor scolded him. Instead, she squeezed his wrist tighter. Her blind eyes seemed almost predatory now. "You think death is the end? Some deaths are soaked in rage and despair, unable to move on. Their souls stay trapped, forever circling the place where the tragedy happened. And that house..." She trailed off, her breath trembling as though afraid of her own words. That house swallowed an entire family. A chill ran through Minh's body. The rain grew heavier, hammering against the tin roof, each drop echoing like a warning. The air was suffocating. The old woman's voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. "They say before she died, the wife cursed everything. She bound her soul to a mirror on the second floor. Every night, she waits there, standing in the dark. Anyone who dares to look into that window, she will call their name in their sleep. And once you hear it, no matter where you run, you'll never escape." Minh's hands turned clammy. Her words cut into him like a blade. He blurted out, "But I live right next door. Am I in danger?" The woman sighed, finally releasing him. Her trembling hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea. "If there's still time, never, ever look directly at the second floor window, not even by accident. The moment she knows your face, you're already lost." Her clouded eyes drifted back toward the house. For a second, Minh swore she wasn't just looking. She was terrified of something unseen lurking within. A gust of wind whipped through, rattling the tarp over the stall. Minh shuddered and instinctively glanced at the second-floor window of the abandoned house. In the faint glow of the street lamp, the dusty frame was just visible, and then he thought he saw a shadow move across it. He rubbed his eyes and looked again. Nothing. Just a dark, empty square. But his heart pounded, sweat running cold down his spine. The old woman whispered, almost as if she was reading his thoughts, "She's watching. Tonight, be careful." Minh hurriedly bid her goodbye and walked quickly home. The rain fell harder, drumming in his ears, mingling with the woman's words that echoed endlessly in his mind. For reasons he couldn't explain, the fear inside him grew heavier, like an invisible rope binding him to that cursed house. And tonight, he knew the sounds would return, but this time, he wasn't sure if he had the strength to ignore them anymore. That night, Minh tossed and turned, unable to sleep. The rain had stopped hours ago, leaving only a suffocating silence that pressed down over the narrow alley.
Outside his window, the dim glow of the street lamp spilled through the cracks, breaking across the white wall in trembling patches of light and shadow. The clock struck close to 2 a.m. Minh rolled from side to side, but sleep refused to come. The old woman's warning echoed in his head. If there's still time, never look directly at the second-floor window. Then he heard it. At first, Minh thought it was a cat, but the sound grew clearer. Thud, thud, thud. Heavy, dragging footsteps. His breath caught in his throat. The sound wasn't in his room. It came from beyond the wall, from inside the abandoned house. The footsteps creaked slowly, deliberately, as if someone or something was descending the old staircase. Minh's heart pounded violently. He sat bolt upright, his eyes darting toward the window. In the faint, broken light, he thought he saw a shadow, a blurred figure framed in the glass of the second floor. He snapped his head away, clutching his temples. "Don't look! Don't look!" He repeated the words like a desperate chant, trying to hold himself together. Then came the knocking. Knock, knock, knock. 3 times, slow, rhythmic. This time it wasn't distant, it was right at his door. Minh swallowed hard, his body frozen in ice. He dared not move, pulling the blanket over his head. But again the sound returned, softer, more patient. Knock, knock. Minh's hands shook violently, and then he heard it, a whisper. Barely louder than breath, yet somehow right at his ear. "Someone is here." Minh jolted, his chest seized tight. He leapt up, scanning the room. Empty, nothing but darkness pressing close, thick and suffocating. The door remained shut, firmly closed, yet his hands dripped with sweat, cold and clammy, as though he had just touched something not human. Frantically, he switched on the desk lamp. Warm yellow light spilled across the room, pushing back the shadows. He forced his breathing steady, muttering to himself that it was just the wind, just his exhausted mind playing tricks. But then he froze. On his desk, across his neatly stacked books, was a wet stain, a trail of water. It stretched from the edge of the desk all the way to the window. Minh staggered closer, his heart hammering in his chest. He peered outside. The small courtyard lay empty. The rusted gate of the abandoned house stood still, unmoving. But on the damp concrete below, in the faint yellow light, he saw them. Footprints. Small, bare, delicate. They started at the rusted gate and ended directly beneath his window. Minh stumbled back, collapsing to the floor. His breath came in ragged gasps, sweat trickling cold down his spine. And then he heard it. A laugh. Thin, warped, cruel. It drifted from beyond the wall, a laugh not of joy, but of mockery, of a predator savoring his fear. That night, Minh dared not close his eyes. He crouched in the corner of his room, clutching his phone like a lifeline, the pale glow of the screen casting his face in sickly white. The ticking of the clock dragged endlessly, each second an agony. Only when the first faint light of dawn seeped through the window did Minh realize he had survived. But deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning.
After a sleepless night,
Minh dragged himself out of his room the next morning. Dark circles bruised his eyes, and his head felt heavy as stone. All day, he buried himself in his books, trying desperately to forget. Maybe it was just exhaustion, just lack of sleep, he told himself. But deep down, the unease clung to him like a shadow, refusing to let go. That evening, as the setting sun bathed the narrow alley in a dying golden light, Minh stood by his window, staring outside. The wind carried dust and brittle leaves swirling through the air. His eyes wandered, almost against his will, to the abandoned house next door. The second-floor window sat in darkness, its wooden frame rotten, laced with cobwebs. And then, Minh's heart seized. In that black void, a figure stood, thin, fragile, dressed in white. Long hair cascading down, covering the face entirely. The figure did not move. It simply stood there, staring directly at him. Minh's throat dried out. He blinked rapidly, hoping it was just an illusion, but every time he opened his eyes, the pale shadow was still there, still watching. He staggered back, his chest hammering. The old woman's warning echoed once more, never look directly at the second-floor window. But it was too late. He had already seen it. For the briefest moment, Minh felt it, an icy gaze piercing through the curtain of hair, locking onto him. A chill swept down his spine, raising every hair on his body. And then, the figure vanished. Minh rubbed his eyes. The window was empty again. Nothing but a hollow darkness, gaping like an open socket, swallowing the light. He exhaled shakily, his body trembling uncontrollably. "It's just my imagination, just my mind playing tricks," he muttered, but the tremor in his voice sounded like a frightened child's. That night, Minh dared not turn off the lights. He sat at his desk with headphones on, blasting music to drown out any noise from outside. But around midnight, a suffocating sensation crept over him, the feeling that someone was watching. Slowly, he turned around. The desk lamp cast its dim glow toward the window behind him, and there, on the dusty glass, was a handprint. Thin, elongated, distorted. Every vein stood out, pale and sickly. The hand slid down, leaving a smeared trail across the glass, like dried blood. Minh shot to his feet, heart clawing its way up his throat. He lunged forward, yanking the curtain shut, then collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. He didn't go near the window again that night, but deep inside, he knew. The figure in white was no illusion. It had been there. It had seen him. The next morning, on his way out, Minh saw the old woman selling tea. She looked at him, her eyes heavy with pity, and shook her head. "You looked, didn't you?" she whispered, her voice like wind through broken shutters. Minh said nothing. He only lowered his head. The woman sighed, then added, "From now on, it will follow you. Be careful." Her words clung to him like a curse. As Minh walked away, he could not shake the feeling. Eyes were watching, clinging to him, never letting go. And he knew the haunting had only begun.